here's Brody Brazil.
You know, the sporting scene in Chicago right now is definitely interesting as it relates to venues. Some teams have it all figured out and squared away, like the Bulls and Hawks. Their home is the United Center, no question about that. The Cubs, they're never leaving Wrigley Field, especially with recent renovations. So that leaves the White Sox and the Bears, especially right now, very much up in the air in terms of what is even possible or not possible in trying to build new stadiums. Now, the White Sox recently made their plans public. It's this site called the 78. It's a brand new neighborhood. They're asking for maybe up to $1.7 billion of public assistance. That's only been going on for a handful of months. The Chicago Bears of the NFL, their saga has been going on much longer than that, but now they've released these brand new plans just one day ahead of the NFL draft to build a brand new stadium to replace Soldier Field.
Now at 5:30, the Bears announced their plans for a new stadium along the lakefront. The team plans to pay for about half of this new development, but they are looking to taxpayers to help cover the costs.
Publicly funding professional stadiums is a contentious issue, a thorny one for politicians who have to prioritize the use of taxes for public good.
Thorny, very good word.
WGN's Mike Lowe is joining us now in studio with a look at one recent example of how voters reacted when they were asked to support these pro stadiums.
And good evening to both of you. The Bears are asking for more than $2 billion in public money to fund the proposed $4.6 billion stadium project.
I mean, those numbers are astronomical, right? And I think this might now be the biggest request. I thought $1.7 billion for the White Sox new stadium was the largest request. Now it sounds like we're talking about a $4.6 billion total tab, but the ask is for about $2 billion.
With the Sox also looking for public financing of a new stadium, there is a recent example that may tell us where public sentiment is on
it ain't good
stadium funding.
This affords us the opportunity to be able to bring this all together.
Both the Bears and the White Sox are seeking public funding for new stadium projects at the same time.
We are not, I repeat, not looking at any additional tax buckets for this project.
It's similar to the situation in Kansas City, where this month voters rejected a sales tax measure.
Not even close, though, tonight. 58% of the Jackson County voters voting no.
That would have helped to fund a new downtown ballpark for the Royals.
It also would have helped the Chiefs fix up Arrowhead, but this was to extend an existing sales tax in Jackson County that had always been going to be shared between these two teams.
Along with major renovations to Arrowhead Stadium for the Chiefs.
Reaction across the region tonight about the future for both the Chiefs and the Royals.
If the Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs can't get the people of their area to authorize the building of a new stadium, I don't really think that the people of Chicago or across Illinois feel any different than they do.
I mean, this is kind of a trend, right? Teams had been asking for money and getting money and then threatening relocation if they didn't get money. And now we're seeing mayors and politicians kind of turning the tables here and saying, well, if they said no, then we're going to say no and everybody's going to say no.
Former Illinois Governor Pat Quinn says the question of using public money should be put to the voters.
The voters with good common sense in Kansas City said no.
Let's be honest, the voters in referendum-style votes like this, in situations like this, they almost have always said no. There are rare circumstances where they don't, but generally speaking, most of the time they do say no.
And the same thing should happen here in Chicago. Give us a chance to vote at the ballot box on whether or not this proposed stadium for the Bears, this billion-dollar boondoggle, should be allowed to happen.
Billion-dollar boondoggle, it's more than $1 billion. And boondoggle's a great word.
The Score is Chicago sports.
At 670 The Score,
your precious football team isn't going anywhere.
Chicago's top sports talk radio station.
Things come in massively over budget, and it's always on the taxpayer to make up those shortfalls.
But see how everybody's like on edge? What the host just said there is they're not going anywhere. Your favorite football team isn't going anywhere. Because when it comes to this money deal, and if they don't get it, I mean, you know the next thing coming. Well, maybe we're not the Chicago Bears anymore, if you know what I'm saying.
Host Dan Bernstein says the Kansas City situation should be a warning to Chicago politicians.
I hope it's predictive, and I certainly understand that we have a governor of this state at the moment with much higher political aspirations who has a pretty good sense of the direction of the winds right now.
A recent study published in the Journal of Economic Surveys looked at 130 stadium projects and found that the fiscal returns for residents are far smaller than the public expenditures.
The money ends up making billionaires richer at the expense of people who actually need these taxpayer dollars for things, so many things that are much more important.
And to put this all in perspective, the Bears are proposing a $4.6 billion stadium. If it were to be built, it would be the second most expensive stadium ever built, behind only SoFi Stadium, which cost an estimated $5 billion, but was paid for all with private money.
Have the Bears looked at private money?
The Bears are using some private money. It's possible they could try and get some other investors, but they're looking to the public first, and that's what they announced today, especially for the infrastructure part. And I think that's one of the keys to putting it on the lakefront, is making it a public stadium.
Yeah, and attractive too.
Appreciate the context. Thanks, Mike.
Okay, let's move on to coverage from Fox 32, who is not ashamed to remind you that they are the home of the Bears.
What it does not call for are raising existing taxes or implementing any new taxes on the residents of the city of Chicago.
That's nice, but I still think it's supposed to cost in the $2 billion range for taxpayers, right?
Part of the mayor's reaction today, and even more reaction pouring in from officials across the state.
Tia Ewing continues our team coverage live now at Soldier Field. Tia.
Well, what I can tell you is that reaction pouring into the Fox 32 newsroom has been mixed, with a majority of leaders remaining skeptical about the Bears' new stadium. Some going as far as to say, if the Bears are worth $6 billion, why don't they foot the bill?
Uh-oh.
The renderings of what could be a new Chicago Bears stadium are simply jaw-dropping.
I mean, renderings always are, right? They're snappy, they're snazzy. Look at that video, the fly-in right to the stadium. Yeah, that was very cool.
I'm a Bears fan. I want to be clear, and I want them to win.
But even Governor J.B. Pritzker isn't holding his breath on it coming to fruition.
I just think that the taxpayers' dollars need to be protected.
The Bears suggest that the existing 2% hotel tax for the ISFA could cover the $900 million they need from public funds, but haven't figured out where the $300 million for infrastructure will come from yet. They're still talking to the state and exploring different funding options.
This is just plain wrong.
Former Illinois Governor Pat Quinn believes the voters should decide on if a new stadium should even be partially paid for with taxpayer money.
If they want to build a stadium, let them buy the land here in Chicago and build it with their own money.
Similar to what was in the works in Arlington Heights when the team purchased 326 acres of land last year. That's now just sitting. The mayor says the Bears will come running back.
I mean, and the confusion here, I think what you'll realize in watching all these stories, the numbers are all slightly different. Like you heard, there was 900, but then they need 300 more. But then later on, you might hear that they still need 1.4 billion for infrastructure. At this point, there are so many scattered numbers. And to me, like, they are big numbers, but they're all not even consistent or clear numbers to understand. We just know that it's about 4.6 and they're asking for about 2 billion.
We ultimately believe that if the Bears are told no, they will refocus their efforts on Arlington Heights.
A major hurdle in the way is getting Friends of the Parks on board. They put out a 788-word statement, and here's some of it. Once again, Chicago taxpayers are being told what is good for them. The powerful and wealthy are demanding that our entire city stop and fast-track their plans to expand operations on the people's lakefront. We are all being asked to trust the process and accept that it will, in fact, be paradise.
Interesting. What's also interesting here is, like, I understand the property there on Lake Michigan. It's on the waterfront and it's right next to downtown. Moving out to Arlington Heights, you're obviously more in the suburbs. So do you want to actually be in the suburbs? And the other thing is, why would you build a domed stadium or not take advantage of some of the outdoor ambiance or have it be retractable? If you're going to be right by the lake right there and you want it to kind of be, exposed, what's the purpose of having an entirely indoor stadium that's next to the lake? You could put that indoor stadium pretty much anywhere, right?
Well, as you know, this is a long road ahead before we can even get to the point of talking about construction. But I think this is an important note to point out. The Bears say that 43,000 jobs would be created for construction alone, and that does not include if this stadium is actually up and running. So all of that to keep in mind. Live tonight, right in front of Soldier Field, Tia Ewing, Fox 32, Chicago.
All right, let's move on to the next story.
We start here at 6 with big news on the lakefront. The Bears unveiled their multi-billion-dollar plan for a new domed stadium. The planned stadium would be built on what is currently a parking garage and lots for the current Soldier Field. And here's the new vision. Just hours ago, the Bears provided the first renderings of what they call a state-of-the-art, publicly owned, enclosed stadium.
This is not an easy project, but Chicago doesn't like it easy. We like to do the difficult things.
Expensive things.
We also learned the Bears would be able to continue playing at Soldier Field during the construction. But the cost of the project causing a lot of confusion tonight. CBS 2's Sabrina Franza joins us live in the studio. So, Sabrina, we know clearly this is going to involve public money. If it happens, the question a lot of people have is, will taxpayers be responsible for it?
Joe, the mayor says no, but the governor seemed to squash dreams of a stadium with a dome before renderings were even released to the public, saying his priority is to look out for those same taxpayers.
This is all so confusing. Like, what's actually being asked for and who would provide it and how much is it actually? What are the numbers? It's kind of crazy, actually.
A huge bill for the Bears' shiny new dome.
But what it does not call for are raising existing taxes or implementing any new taxes on the residents of the city of Chicago.
Things, I guess, are shifting, but what's not being then funded? Like, how do you divert the? I'm so confused by that. It sounds nice. It's like low-hanging fruit. It sounds easy, but there's got to be much more to it.
Mayor Brendan Johnson claims the taxpayers won't be on the hook.
This project will result in no new taxes on the residents of Chicago.
Governor J.B. Pritzker expressed concern to the contrary.
But I remain skeptical about this proposal, and I wonder whether it's a good deal for the taxpayers.
The new stadium is projected to cost $3.2 billion. Over $2 billion of that is coming from the Bears. The other millions from an NFL loan request and from state bonds.
Okay, that makes sense. And the NFL is one of the leagues that does give money in large amounts to their teams every so often. Like, you can't keep going back to the well, but the NFL does put aside money to give to teams for new stadiums.
The surrounding infrastructure is expected to cost $1.5 billion for a grand total of $4.7 billion.
Okay, so at least we've arrived at that. Now I can understand that a lot more clearly. Stadiums 3.2, infrastructure $1.5 billion alone. That is a lot.
The infrastructure component of this, which is the place that is most immediately, directly, and likely to be the taxpayer burden, to be the government financing burden.
Joe Ferguson, the president of the Civic Federation.
The fact that the mayor was standing and essentially part of this press conference should be a little bit concerning because it suggests a kind of capture of city government before we've even gotten this out of the gate.
The Bears in the city suggested they would ask the federal government to front at least some of the remaining bill. Experts are weary Chicago would get that money, depending on who sits in the Oval Office.
If it is not a Democrat in the White House, we also run the risk of not getting that money. Is that a concern of yours?
Let's put a fine point on it. If Donald Trump is president, the federal spigot gets turned off, period.
Chicago Bears president Kevin Warren cautioned Springfield, saying that the time to get this done is now. He believes that the longer they wait, the more the cost could go up. About $900 million in public funding for the stadium would come from 40-year bonds financed by an existing 2% hotel tax. But that bonding plan needs approval from the Illinois General Assembly. Sabrina Franza, CBS 2 News. Joe?
Step one today. Sabrina, thank you.
So complicated, going all the way up to the Oval Office for stuff like this. It is kind of amazing.
Good afternoon. I'm Marie Saavedra.
Great to have you with us. I'm Joe Donlin. The Chicago Bears say they are staying in Chicago.
By the way, you've noticed here that the news coverage, it doesn't really go into what the renderings are, what the stadium is, and its amenities and its features, and why it'll be great for Chicago Bear football fans. And I didn't really cherry pick like these news reports. Everything that's out there is literally on, okay, who's actually going to pay for this? Where are we going to get the money for this? And is it a realistic possibility? That's the point I'm trying to make in all of this. That's the question in all of this.
Unveiling a plan to build a $3.2 billion domed stadium next to Soldier Field. And they say it's not just Bears fans who will benefit.
CBS 2 investigator Megan Hickey has a look at what needs to happen next in order for this stadium to become a reality.
The Chicago Bears are going to put up $2 billion, but if this plan is going to become a reality, Chicago Bears president Kevin Warren says that Springfield needs to act quickly on a funding bill to cover the gap. The new Lakefront Stadium wouldn't be far away. But Chicago Bears president Kevin Warren says it will be more inclusive of the public, beyond just the fans rooting for the Monsters of the Midway.
We have an opportunity here to build a year-round place where this city can come together.
The Chicago Bears plan to privately invest more than $2 billion of the $3.2 billion needed to build a fully enclosed stadium that would be built just to the south of Soldier Field.
And they said it would be used year-round. I mean, I that's the other thing about football stadiums, at least a baseball stadium. At least you get 81 plus days out of it per season. And an indoor, like hockey and basketball arena, if you have two teams like the United Center does, there's another 82 dates, 82 home dates plus per year. So at least you keep those venues full. For NFL stadiums, you're talking about 8, 9, 10 total Sundays per year. That's it. That's barely anything. My point is, if you're going to do this, if you're going to spend that much on this, you had better make sure that building is used and full like 150 days or nights of the year.
Soldier Field's historic colonnades would remain, outlining a huge publicly accessible recreational space alongside the replacement stadium, available for youth sports and community events.
And this is the first time we've actually heard any report talk about, like I said before, the plans, the amenities, and why this would even be good outside of all the money issues.
It would also require significant infrastructure improvements to allow easier access to the area.
One of the biggest private investments into a public-owned facility in the state's history.
Which is great. Like, I do appreciate the Bears saying, we got you on the $2 billion. But I think the total is still $2+ more billion than that. You know what I mean?
The Bears are also seeking $900 million in public funding through the Illinois Sports Facilities Authority. Mayor Brandon Johnson.
It is an honor to be here to celebrate the Bears' commitment to remaining.
We've heard him say this before. He'll say it again. The Chicago Bears. Watch.
The Chicago Bears.
Says it's worth the price tag because of the projected $8 billion economic impact on the region, including about 43,000 construction jobs and 4,200 new annual jobs to the Chicagoland area, and a massive infrastructure investment. Warren said the target date to get fans in the seats is sometime in 2028, but it would require lawmakers to pass a funding bill this session and not push it to the fall.
See, and that's another thing. It always comes with some urgency. Like, okay, we need this approval. And by the way, we need it now because we need to start this. We need to have it done by 2028, which would be impressive, by the way, to finish a project of this size and magnitude. We're halfway through almost 2024.
If we're approved in May, then that will allow us to be able to start construction to put people to work next summer. And that would allow us 36 months later to open up our building in 2028.
So what about a retractable dome? Warren said that they looked into it, they liked the idea, but they learned it would add another couple $100 million to the price tag. So they decided to keep a fixed roof instead that should let in a large amount of natural sunlight. At Soldier Field, Megan Hickey, CBS 2 investigators.
All right. Is that? Yeah, I think that is the last report. So it's interesting. In Chicago, the Bears have now put forward their plans and the timing the day before the NFL draft, trying to capture attention and everybody's excitement, I suppose, to some degree. But will this happen? Will it not happen? The cost is astronomical. It's higher than we've ever seen, like any other pro sports stadium project as of recently. So the ask is huge. And also, like I said before, the timing with the White Sox. You've got one team asking for 1.7. You've got another team asking for $2 billion. If you're Illinois or city of Chicago or any county around there, I mean, all of this is extremely difficult. And it makes me wonder if there's eventually room for everybody. Thumbs up because you've made it to the end of this video. You know, I appreciate that. That'll help me and this video and this channel if you give me the thumbs up down below. Also, go down there and hit the subscribe button because if you've never seen me before or this channel, it's actually a good thing. I'd love to make sure I see you again. So go ahead and hit that subscribe button so I can definitely see you back here next time.